Have you ever felt mysteriously drawn to the moon's phases, sensing something deeper calling to you during full moons or new moons? You're not alone. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, believed that celestial bodies like the moon hold profound psychological significance for human consciousness, particularly for women. The moon has captivated humanity since the dawn of time, but Jung saw it as more than just a celestial object. He viewed it as a powerful symbol of the feminine principle, the unconscious mind, and the cyclical nature of psychological transformation. For women especially, the moon represents an ancient connection to intuitive wisdom, emotional depth, and the natural rhythms that govern both inner and outer life. In our modern world, we've become disconnected from these natural cycles. We live by artificial light, work against our biological rhythms, and often ignore the subtle energetic shifts that occur throughout the lunar month. But what if reconnecting with the moon's phases could help you understand yourself more deeply and live more authentically? Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests that we all share archetypal patterns and symbols that transcend individual experience. The moon, as one of humanity's most enduring symbols, carries within it the blueprint for feminine wisdom, receptivity, and cyclical renewal. When we align ourselves with lunar energy, we're not just following an ancient practice, we're tapping into fundamental aspects of the human psyche. This isn't about superstition or blind belief. It's about recognizing that our psychological states naturally ebb and flow, much like the moon's phases. By understanding these patterns through a Jungian lens, we can work with our natural rhythms rather than against them, leading to greater self-awareness, emotional balance, and psychological integration. Before we dive deeper into this fascinating intersection of psychology and lunar wisdom, if you're finding this content valuable, please consider subscribing to our channel. We explore the depths of human consciousness and practical wisdom for living authentically every week. Tonight, we'll explore how each moon phase corresponds to different psychological states and how you can harness this knowledge for personal growth and transformation. To understand how to align with lunar energy, we must first explore Jung's concept of the anima. In Jungian psychology, the anima represents the feminine aspect of the male psyche, but more broadly, it symbolizes the receptive, intuitive, and feeling-oriented aspects of consciousness that exist in all humans regardless of gender. The moon, in countless cultures and mythologies, embodies these exact qualities. Jung observed that the moon appears consistently in dreams, fantasies, and mythological narratives as a symbol of the feminine principle. Unlike the sun, which represents masculine consciousness, clarity, and rational thought, the moon governs the realm of the unconscious, emotions, and cyclical change. This isn't about gender stereotypes. It's about recognizing two fundamental modes of consciousness that complement each other. The lunar feminine operates through receptivity rather than action, intuition rather than logic, and cyclical understanding rather than linear progression. In our achievement-oriented society, these qualities are often undervalued, yet they're essential for psychological wholeness. Jung called this integration of opposites the process of individuation, becoming a complete, authentic individual. For women, this connection to lunar symbolism often feels particularly resonant because many feminine biological and psychological processes naturally follow cyclical patterns. The menstrual cycle, for instance, mirrors the lunar month, creating an inherent attunement to moon phases that can be both physical and psychological. However, this doesn't mean men can't benefit from lunar awareness. Everyone possesses both solar and lunar qualities within their psyche. Jung believed that modern Western culture had become dangerously imbalanced towards solar consciousness, rational, goal-oriented, and disconnected from natural rhythms. He saw the revival of lunar awareness as essential for psychological health and collective healing. When we ignore the moon's influence, we ignore crucial aspects of our own psychological nature. The moon's phases represent different states of consciousness and being. The new moon corresponds to the depths of the unconscious, the waxing moon to growing awareness and intention, the full moon to peak consciousness and emotional intensity, and the waning moon to release and integration. These aren't arbitrary associations. They reflect fundamental patterns of how consciousness naturally operates. By working with these lunar rhythms, we align ourselves with what Jung called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that bridges conscious and unconscious content, leading to greater self-understanding and wholeness. The new moon phase represents the darkest point in the lunar cycle, when the moon is invisible to the naked eye. In Jungian terms, this mirrors the descent into the unconscious, that vast realm of the psyche containing our shadow material, repressed memories, and untapped potential. Rather than fearing this darkness, Jung encouraged us to embrace it as the source of creativity and renewal. During the new moon, the veil between conscious and unconscious becomes thinnest. This is when dreams become more vivid, intuition heightens, and we're naturally drawn toward introspection. Jung called this process going into the darkness, not as an escape from reality, but as a necessary journey to reclaim lost parts of ourselves. For women, the new moon often corresponds to menstruation, a time when energy naturally turns inward. This isn't weakness or withdrawal. It's profound psychological work. The new moon invites us to examine our shadow material, those aspects of ourselves we've denied or rejected. Jung believed that integrating the shadow was essential for psychological wholeness. Practically, this means using new moon energy for deep self-reflection. Instead of pushing forward with new projects or social activities, this is the time to journal, meditate, or simply sit with whatever emotions arise. The new moon asks us to be comfortable with not knowing, with sitting in the fertile darkness of possibility. Many women report having their most insightful dreams during the new moon phase. Jung would have seen this as the unconscious attempting to communicate important information through symbolic language. Pay attention to recurring symbols or themes in your dreams during this time. They often contain messages about what needs attention in your waking life. The new moon also represents the archetype of the crone, the wise older woman who has integrated her life experiences and gained deep wisdom. Even young women can access this archetype during new moon times, tapping into ancestral wisdom and intuitive knowing that transcends personal experience. This phase is ideal for practices that honor the descent into darkness: meditation, shadow work, dream analysis, and any form of introspective practice. It's also an excellent time for releasing what no longer serves you, making space for new growth to emerge. Jung understood that our culture's fear of darkness, both literal and metaphorical, creates psychological imbalance. The new moon teaches us that darkness isn't the absence of light, but the fertile void from which all creation emerges. By aligning with new moon energy, we learn to trust the natural cycles of death and rebirth that govern all psychological growth. As the moon begins to grow from darkness into light, we enter the waxing phase, a time of emerging consciousness, intention setting, and gradual manifestation. In Jungian psychology, this represents the movement from unconscious potential into conscious awareness, the process by which insights gained during the new moon begin to take form in our waking lives. The waxing moon embodies the archetype of the maiden, young, fresh, full of potential and enthusiasm for new beginnings. This isn't about chronological age, but about a psychological state of openness to growth and possibility. Even women in their later years can access this maiden energy during waxing moon periods, feeling renewed vitality and creative inspiration. Jung emphasized that consciousness doesn't emerge all at once, but gradually, like the moon's increasing illumination. The waxing moon teaches us patience with our own psychological development. Just as the moon doesn't rush from new to full, our insights and intentions need time to develop and strengthen before they can fully manifest. This is the ideal time for what Jung called active imagination, a technique where we consciously engage with unconscious material through visualization, creative expression, or dialogue with inner figures. The waxing moon's energy supports this bridge building between conscious and unconscious realms. During this phase, many women experience increased energy, optimism, and motivation. Biologically, this often corresponds to the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle, when estrogen levels rise and we feel more outwardly focused. Psychologically, it's when the seeds planted during the new moon begin to sprout into conscious awareness. The waxing moon is perfect for beginning new projects, but Jung would caution against rushing into action without proper psychological preparation. Instead, use this time to clarify your intentions, visualize your goals, and gradually build momentum. The moon's steady increase in light mirrors how sustainable change happens, not through force, but through consistent, gentle progress. This phase also represents the integration of shadow material discovered during the new moon. As Jung noted, simply becoming aware of our shadow isn't enough. We must actively work to integrate these aspects into our conscious personality. The waxing moon provides the energy and motivation needed for this challenging but essential work. Pay attention to what themes, desires, or insights are emerging during this time. The waxing moon often brings clarity about what we truly want to create in our lives, helping us distinguish between authentic desires and societal expectations. This is crucial for women, who often face pressure to conform to others' expectations, rather than following their own path. The full moon represents the pinnacle of lunar energy when the moon shines at its brightest and most powerful. In Jungian terms, this corresponds to peak consciousness, the moment when unconscious contents have fully emerged into awareness, demanding integration and action. This is both the most illuminating and potentially most challenging phase of the lunar cycle. Jung understood that consciousness isn't always comfortable. The full moon can bring intense emotions, heightened sensitivity, and a sense of being overwhelmed by awareness. Everything becomes more vivid, more intense, more demanding of our attention. This is why many people report feeling restless or emotionally charged during full moons. They're experiencing the psychological pressure of peak consciousness. The full moon embodies the archetype of the mother in her full power, creative, nurturing, but also fierce and protective. This isn't just about biological motherhood, but about the psychological capacity to bring forth new life, whether that's ideas, projects, relationships, or aspects of ourselves. The mother archetype contains both the tender nurturer and the fierce protector, reflecting the full moon's dual nature of illumination and intensity. During full moon periods, Jung would have recognized the heightened access to what he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that unites conscious and unconscious content. This is why full moons are often associated with breakthroughs, revelations, and sudden insights. The increased lunar energy facilitates the bridging of opposites within the psyche. For women, the full moon often corresponds to ovulation, a time of peak fertility and energy. This biological peak mirrors the psychological peak of the lunar cycle, when everything we've been working toward reaches its culmination. It's a time of harvest, celebration, and also potential overwhelm if we haven't prepared properly. This phase demands what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. The full moon illuminates both light and shadow, beauty and ugliness, hope and fear. Rather than trying to escape this intensity, the full moon teaches us to embrace paradox and complexity. This is essential for psychological maturity and wholeness. If you're enjoying this deep dive into lunar psychology and want to explore more content like this, please hit that subscribe button. We regularly share insights that help you understand yourself more deeply and live more authentically. The full moon is also ideal for practices that honor peak energy, celebration, creative expression, community gathering, and any form of energetic release that feels authentic to you. As the moon begins to decrease in light after its full peak, we enter the waning phase, a time of integration, reflection, and conscious release. In Jungian psychology, this represents the crucial process of integrating the insights and experiences gained during the peak consciousness of the full moon. Without this integration phase, the powerful revelations of the full moon remain mere experiences rather than transformative wisdom. The waning moon embodies the archetype of the wise woman or elder, she who has experienced the full cycle of growth, peak, and decline, and has learned to extract wisdom from each phase. This isn't about age in years, but about psychological maturity and the ability to learn from experience. The waning moon teaches us that decline isn't failure, but a natural and necessary part of any healthy cycle. Jung emphasized that consciousness without integration leads to inflation, a psychological state where we become identified with our peak experiences rather than learning from them. The waning moon prevents this inflation by gently pulling us back from the intensity of full moon consciousness into a more grounded, reflective state. This phase is ideal for what Jung called amplification, the process of exploring the personal and collective meanings of our experiences. Take the insights, emotions, or revelations from the full moon and examine them more deeply. What do they mean for your life? How do they connect to larger patterns in your psyche? What wisdom can you extract from the intensity you've experienced? For many women, the waning moon corresponds to the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, when progesterone levels create a more inward-focused, reflective energy. This is often when we naturally feel drawn to organize, clean, complete projects, and tie up loose ends. Psychologically, it's when we process and integrate the experiences of the previous phases. The waning moon also represents the shadow side of the mother archetype, the aspect that knows when to let go, when to say no, when to withdraw nurturing energy. In our culture, which often pressures women to be endlessly giving and available, the waning moon teaches the wisdom of boundaries and the sacred act of release. This is the time for practices that honor integration and release, journaling about recent experiences, forgiveness work, decluttering both physical and emotional space, and any practices that help you process and release what no longer serves you. The waning moon teaches us that letting go isn't loss, but liberation. Jung understood that the process of individuation, becoming a whole, authentic individual, requires cycles of expansion and contraction, taking in and letting go. The waning moon represents the essential contraction phase that makes space for the next cycle of growth. Now that we've explored how each moon phase corresponds to different psychological states and archetypal energies, the question becomes, how do we practically integrate this wisdom into our daily lives? Jung believed that understanding archetypal patterns was only valuable if it led to more conscious, authentic living. The first step is developing moon awareness. Begin tracking the lunar phases alongside your own energy patterns, emotions, and experiences. Notice how you feel during each phase without trying to force yourself into any particular pattern. Some women find they naturally align with traditional correspondences, while others may have their own unique relationship with lunar energy. Both are valid. Create rituals that honor each phase. These don't need to be elaborate. Jung was more interested in psychological authenticity than external performance. A new moon ritual might involve journaling about what you're ready to release or setting intentions for inner work. A full moon ritual might include celebration, creative expression, or energetic release through movement or sound. Pay attention to your dreams throughout the lunar cycle. Jung considered dreams the royal road to the unconscious, and many people report that dream content shifts with moon phases. Keep a dream journal and notice patterns over several lunar cycles. The unconscious often communicates through lunar symbolism in dreams. Most importantly, use lunar awareness as a tool for self-compassion. Our culture often demands consistent productivity and emotional stability, but lunar consciousness teaches us that natural rhythms include periods of withdrawal, intensity, and renewal. Aligning with these rhythms isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Jung's concept of individuation reminds us that the goal isn't to become someone else's idea of the perfect woman, but to become more fully ourselves. Lunar alignment supports this process by helping us honor our natural rhythms and cycles, rather than fighting against them. Remember that this is a practice, not a performance. Some months, you might feel deeply connected to lunar energy, while others, you might barely notice the moon's phases. Both experiences are part of the journey. The moon will continue its faithful cycle, whether or not you're consciously participating, and there's comfort in that constancy. As you begin or deepen your practice of lunar alignment, approach it with curiosity rather than judgment. Notice what resonates, what feels authentic, and what supports your psychological growth. The moon has been humanity's companion for millennia, offering her wisdom to anyone willing to pause, observe, and listen to the deeper rhythms of consciousness. In aligning with lunar energy through a Jungian lens, we reclaim an ancient wisdom that supports modern psychological health, the understanding that we are cyclical beings living in a cyclical universe, and that our greatest strength lies not in fighting these rhythms, but in dancing with them.